Emily loved taking evening walks. She was 8 months pregnant, and walking helped her relax. It was a quiet night, with a soft breeze in the air. The streetlights flickered, casting long shadows on the pavement. The neighborhood was peaceful, with only the distant hum of cars in the background. As Emily walked past a park, she suddenly heard barking. At first, she ignored it, thinking it was just a dog in someone's yard, but the barking grew louder, more desperate. It was coming from the sidewalk ahead. Emily stopped. A large German shepherd stood in the middle of the path, staring right at her. The dog's ears were perked up, and its body was tense. Its dark eyes locked onto Emily. Then it barked again, loud and urgent. Emily's heart pounded. She had always liked dogs, but this one seemed aggressive. She took a step back. The dog stepped forward. She turned to go the other way, but the dog quickly moved, blocking her path. "What do you want?" she whispered, clutching her belly. The dog didn't growl, but it kept barking and whining, its tail wagging slightly, as if trying to communicate something. Emily felt uneasy. The dog wasn't attacking her, but it wasn't letting her leave either. A man walking his small poodle on the other side of the street noticed the scene. He frowned and pulled out his phone. "I think a stray dog is bothering a pregnant woman," he muttered as he dialed 911. Emily, still frozen in place, decided to take another step. The dog barked even louder, almost as if warning her. That's when she realized something strange. The dog wasn't looking at her, it was looking past her. Slowly, Emily turned her head. A chill ran down her spine. In the distance, beyond the park's fence, there was a dark construction site. It was abandoned at night, with piles of wood and steel scattered everywhere. But something caught her attention, a faint noise, a muffled sound, almost like a cry for help. Emily's breath hitched. Was someone there? The dog barked again, stepping side to side, clearly agitated. It whined and looked at her expectantly. It wanted her to follow. Before Emily could react, blue and red lights flashed in the distance. A police car pulled up, and two officers stepped out. "What's going on?" one of them asked, his hand resting on his belt. The man with the poodle pointed at the dog. It was barking like crazy at the lady. "I thought it might be dangerous." Emily shook her head. "I don't think it's trying to hurt me," she said, her voice uncertain. It's acting strange, though." The dog turned to face the officers and barked again. It trotted a few steps toward the construction site, then looked back at them. It was trying to lead them somewhere. The younger officer exchanged a glance with his partner. "That's weird," he murmured, "almost like it wants us to follow it." The older officer sighed. "Could be nothing, or it could be something." He reached for his flashlight. The dog barked once more, then turned and ran toward the construction site. Emily's heart pounded. The police officers hesitated for only a second before one of them nodded. "Let's check it out." They followed the dog into the darkness. Emily stood frozen as she watched the police officers follow the dog into the dark construction site. Her heart was racing. She didn't know why, but she felt something terrible was about to happen. The officers moved carefully, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The German shepherd led the way, stopping every few seconds to make sure they were following. It whined and barked again, its voice echoing through the empty lot. "Stay back, ma'am," one officer called over his shoulder. "It might not be safe." Emily nodded, but she couldn't look away. The streetlights didn't reach far into the construction area, making it difficult to see what lay ahead. The officers stepped over broken wood and metal scraps. The air smelled of dust and cement. The only sound was their boots crunching on gravel and the dog's anxious whimpers. "Something's not right," the younger officer muttered. Suddenly, they heard it, a faint, weak sound, like someone groaning. Both officers froze. "Did you hear that?" The German shepherd barked wildly and ran ahead. The officers exchanged a quick glance before hurrying after it. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to shout and ask what was happening, but fear held her back. The dog led them to a deep pit in the middle of the site. It was about 10 feet down, surrounded by crumbling dirt and loose rocks. The officers shone their flashlights inside. There, at the bottom of the pit, lay a man. His body was twisted awkwardly, and his face was covered in dirt and blood. His shirt was torn, and one of his legs looked badly injured. His breathing was shallow. He was barely conscious. The older officer immediately reached for his radio. "We need an ambulance at the old construction site near Parkwood Avenue. We've got an injured male, possible broken bones. He's unresponsive but alive." The man stirred slightly at the sound of their voices. He let out a weak cough. The German shepherd whined and circled the edge of the pit, pawing at the ground. It let out a low, mournful howl. The younger officer knelt down and shone his flashlight directly at the man's face. "Sir, can you hear me?" The man's eyes fluttered open for a brief second. His lips moved, but no words came out. The dog whined again, this time nudging the officer's arm. It was as if the dog was saying, "Hurry." Emily took a few hesitant steps closer. Her pulse was pounding in her ears. The officer turned to her. "Stay back, miss. The ground isn't stable." She nodded, but her eyes remained fixed on the injured man. "Who is he?" she whispered. The older officer looked down at the man again. "No idea. But if this dog hadn't led us here, he wouldn't have survived the night." A shiver ran down Emily's spine. The thought was terrifying. Within minutes, the wail of an approaching ambulance filled the air. The paramedics rushed in, carrying their equipment. They carefully climbed down into the pit and began checking the man's injuries. The German shepherd didn't take its eyes off him. It sat at the edge, its ears twitching at every small movement. "Where did this dog even come from?" one of the paramedics asked. No one had an answer. Emily looked at the German shepherd, suddenly realizing something. This dog wasn't just a stray. It had been trying to save someone all along. But there was still one question left unanswered. Who was the man in the pit, and what had happened to him? The paramedics worked quickly, checking the man's injuries. His breathing was weak, and his leg looked badly broken. He had deep scratches on his arms, and his face was covered in dirt. "He's lucky to be alive," one paramedic said, wrapping a bandage around the man's head. The German shepherd sat at the edge of the pit, whining. Its tail flicked anxiously as it watched the paramedics. It hadn't taken its eyes off the injured man since they arrived. Emily, still standing a few feet away, felt a chill run down her spine. How long had he been down there, and how did he even fall? One of the officers turned on his radio. "The injured male is alive, but he's in bad shape. We'll transport him to the hospital now. We need backup to secure the area." As they spoke, the man let out a soft groan. His fingers twitched slightly. The younger officer leaned closer. "Sir, can you hear me?" The man's eyes fluttered open for a brief second. His lips moved, but only a faint whisper escaped. "Duke?" The German shepherd's ears perked up. It stood and let out a sharp bark. The officer frowned. What did he say? "Duke? Where's Duke?" Emily's eyes widened. "Duke." The officer looked at the dog. "Is this Duke?" The dog barked again as if answering. "That explains a lot," the older officer muttered. "This isn't some random stray. He's been trying to save his owner this whole time." The paramedics carefully lifted the injured man onto a stretcher. The German shepherd tried to follow, but one of the officers gently held out a hand. "Easy boy. We'll take care of him." Duke let out a soft whine but didn't resist. As they carried the man to the ambulance, Emily felt an uneasy feeling in her chest. Something wasn't right. She turned to the officer. "How do you think he fell?" The officer shook his head. "Could have been an accident. These old construction sites can be dangerous at night." Emily bit her lip. She wasn't so sure. Something told her there was more to this story. The ambulance doors closed, and the sirens wailed as it sped away toward the hospital. The officers radioed for animal control to pick up Duke, but the dog had other plans. The moment the ambulance disappeared from sight, Duke bolted. "Hey!" one officer shouted, but Duke was already gone, sprinting into the night. Emily watched him disappear into the darkness. She had a feeling this wasn't the last time they'd see Duke. And deep down, she feared the real mystery hadn't even begun yet. The night felt colder as Emily watched Duke disappear into the darkness. Her heart pounded. Why did the dog run? Where was he going? One of the officers sighed. "Well, there goes our witness." His partner shook his head. "We'll find him later. Right now, we need to figure out what happened to that man." Emily bit her lip. Something about this felt wrong. She couldn't shake the feeling that Duke had run off for a reason. The officers finished checking the construction site, but there were no clues, no broken fence, no footprints leading in. It was as if the injured man had just appeared there. "Come on, miss," the older officer said kindly. "Let's get you home. You've had a long night." Emily hesitated, but nodded. She was exhausted, and her baby kicked gently, as if reminding her to rest. The officers gave her a ride home, but sleep didn't come easily. She kept thinking about Duke and his injured owner. What if Duke was running because something worse was about to happen? The next morning, Emily woke to the sound of her phone ringing. It was her friend, Lisa. "Emily, turn on the news." Emily sat up quickly and grabbed the remote. As the screen flickered on, her stomach dropped. A reporter stood outside the hospital, looking serious. Last night, a construction worker was found injured at an abandoned site. Authorities believe he fell, but something strange has happened. The camera switched to an officer. "The man was unconscious when we found him, but when he woke up this morning, he had no memory of how he got there." Emily's blood ran cold. No memory. The reporter continued, "Doctors say he suffered a head injury, but they're not sure why he has complete memory loss. He only remembers one thing, his dog Duke." Lisa's voice came through the phone. "Emily, isn't that the dog you saw last night?" Emily swallowed hard. "Yes, and he ran away before we could catch him." Lisa paused. "Then where is he now?" Emily had no answer. Meanwhile, miles away, Duke ran through the streets. His paws hit the pavement hard. He didn't stop. He had one mission, find his owner. But he wasn't just running anywhere. He was going back. Back to where the trouble started. His sharp nose picked up a familiar scent, leading him toward an old warehouse near the construction site. Duke slowed down, his ears twitching. He let out a soft growl. Something was wrong. The door to the warehouse was slightly open. Duke sniffed the air. He smelled something familiar. Then, deep inside, he heard a sound, a low voice. Duke's body tensed. He recognized that voice. Someone was inside, and they weren't supposed to be there. Duke stood outside the warehouse, his ears perked up. His sharp nose picked up a scent, one he recognized. His owner had been here, but there was something else, a scent that made Duke's fur stand on end. Danger. Inside the warehouse, a low voice muttered something. Duke crouched low, creeping forward. The door was slightly open, and the dim light inside cast long shadows. Carefully, Duke nudged the door with his nose and slipped inside. The air smelled of oil, dust, and metal. Wooden crates were stacked against the walls. Duke moved silently, his paws making no sound. Then he saw them. Two men stood near a table covered in papers. They looked nervous. One of them was tall and skinny, wearing a black jacket. The other was shorter, with a scar on his cheek. "This is bad," the man in the black jacket whispered. "That guy survived." The scarred man clenched his fists. "Yeah, but he doesn't remember anything." Yet, the first man hissed, "What if his memory comes back? Then we're in trouble." Duke's ears twitched. He didn't understand their words, but he knew one thing. These men had something to do with his owner's accident. The scarred man sighed. "We should have made sure he was." He stopped suddenly. His eyes narrowed. "Did you hear that?" Duke froze. The man in the black jacket turned around. He picked up a metal pipe from the table. "I swear I heard something." Duke's heart pounded. He had to act fast. Just as the men took a step toward him, Duke let out a deep, warning growl. Both men spun around. "What the?" "It's a dog," the scarred man shouted. Duke didn't wait. He lunged forward, barking fiercely. The men stumbled back in surprise. "Get it out of here," the man in the black jacket yelled. Duke snapped his teeth, forcing them to step back again. He wasn't here to play. The scarred man grabbed a chair and swung it at Duke, but Duke dodged easily. He barked again, louder this time. He needed to alert someone. The commotion must have been loud enough because suddenly the sound of sirens echoed in the distance. The men panicked. "The cops! Let's go!" They shoved papers into a bag and ran toward the back door. Duke bolted after them, but they were too fast. The door slammed shut behind them. For a moment, all was quiet. Then footsteps rushed toward the warehouse entrance. Police, is anyone in here? Duke turned around as officers entered with flashlights. His tail wagged slightly in relief. One of the officers recognized him. Hey, it's that dog from last night. Duke barked and ran to the table where the men had been. He pawed at the papers they left behind. The officer frowned. Wait a minute. What's this? He picked up one of the documents and his eyes widened. We need to get this to the station. Now. Duke had done it. He had found the truth. But was it too late? The officers quickly gathered the scattered papers from the table. Duke stood beside them, his tail wagging slightly, but his eyes remained focused on the door where the two men had escaped. He wasn't ready to stop yet. One of the officers scanned through the papers, his expression turning serious. This is big, he muttered. His partner glanced over. What is it? These papers, they mentioned the construction site where we found that man last night. Duke barked loudly as if to say, I knew it. Emily had just arrived at the scene after hearing about the commotion. She spotted Duke and ran over. Duke, she called, relief washing over her. You found something, didn't you? Duke wagged his tail, but quickly turned his focus back to the officers. Emily looked at the papers in the officer's hands. What did they say? The officer took a deep breath. It looks like illegal activity was happening at the construction site. Someone was using the area to store stolen goods. If this man, Duke's owner, found out about it, they might have tried to get rid of him. Emily's stomach dropped. You mean, they pushed him into that pit on purpose? The officer nodded grimly. It's possible. Just then, the radio on his shoulder crackled to life. Suspects spotted near the train station, officers in pursuit. Duke's ears perked up. Without hesitation, he took off running. Duke, wait! Emily called, but the dog didn't stop. The officers exchanged glances. We better follow him. Duke ran as fast as his legs would carry him. He knew he was close. His nose picked up the scent of the two men from the warehouse. As he reached the train station, he spotted them. They were rushing toward a train, trying to escape. Duke let out a sharp bark, making them turn their heads. It's that dog again, the scarred man yelled. Duke growled and sprinted forward, dodging between people. The men panicked, pushing through the crowd. Just as they reached the train doors, Duke lunged. He bit down on the man's jacket, yanking him backward. Get off me! The man screamed, stumbling. His partner turned to help, but it was too late. Several officers had arrived, surrounding them. Hands up! The men froze. The officers moved in quickly, grabbing them before they could escape. Duke finally let go of the jacket, stepping back as the officers handcuffed the criminals. Emily arrived just in time to see it all. She watched as the men were led away and then turned to Duke with admiration. You did it, boy, she whispered, kneeling beside him. She ran a hand over his fur. You saved your owner and helped catch the bad guys. Duke wagged his tail, licking Emily's hand. One of the officers smiled. I think we owed this dog a medal. Everyone laughed, but deep down they all knew, without Duke, this mystery would have never been solved. But now, one question remained. Would Duke's owner ever remember what happened that night? Duke sat outside the hospital, his tail wagging slowly as he watched people come and go. His heart told him to run inside, to find his owner. But he waited patiently, just as he had been taught. Emily stood beside him, her hand resting gently on her belly. Don't worry, boy, she said softly. The doctor said he's awake now. Maybe he'll remember you. Duke perked up at her words. His ears twitched with hope. A few minutes later, the officer from before stepped outside. He smiled when he saw Duke. Good news, he said. Your owner is awake and asking about you. Duke barked excitedly. Emily's heart warmed. Come on, boy. It's time to see him. Inside the hospital, Duke's nails clicked against the tile floor as they walked down the hallway. The smell of medicine filled the air, but Duke wasn't afraid. He knew his owner was close. When they reached the room, Duke's tail wagged wildly. The man lay in the hospital bed, looking tired but alert. His head was wrapped in bandages, and his arm was in a cast. But when he saw Duke, his eyes filled with emotion. "Duke," he whispered. Duke barked joyfully and rushed to the side. He gently placed his head on the bed, licking his owner's hand. The man chuckled weakly. "You never gave up on me, did you?" Emily wiped a tear from her eye. "He saved you. He led the cops right to the bad guys, too." The man's eyes flickered with confusion. He looked down at Duke, stroking his fur. I still don't remember everything, but I remember him." Duke whimpered softly, as if telling him it was okay. The officer stepped forward. "We found out what happened. You discovered stolen goods at the construction site. The criminals tried to get rid of you, but Duke never stopped fighting to save you." The man took a deep breath, staring at Duke. "You protected me, didn't you, boy?" Duke licked his hand again, as if saying always. Emily smiled, even when no one else knew he did. For a long moment, the room was quiet. Then the man closed his eyes, a tear slipping down his cheek. "Thank you, Duke," he whispered. "You're my hero." Duke let out a happy bark, his tail wagging hard enough to shake the bed. Emily laughed. "Looks like he's just happy to have you back." The officer nodded, and thanks to Duke, those men won't hurt anyone else. The man smiled weakly, running his fingers through Duke's fur. "I may have lost my memory," he said, "but I'll never forget him." Duke curled up beside the bed, his eyes full of love. He had done his job, and now he was finally home. A few days had passed since Duke's owner woke up. Though his memory was still foggy, he was healing well, and through it all, Duke never left his side. The hospital staff adored Duke. They let him stay in the room during visiting hours, and he became the favorite visitor in the entire hospital. Nurses would stop by just to give him belly rubs and treats. Emily visited often too, checking on both Duke and his owner. She felt deeply connected to them now, as if fate had brought them together. One afternoon, as the sun streamed through the hospital window, Duke's owner smiled at Emily. "I never got to properly thank you," he said. "If you hadn't called for help that night, I might not be here." Emily smiled warmly. "It wasn't just me. Duke never gave up. He knew something was wrong." The man looked at Duke, who was curled up at his feet. He reached down, scratching behind Duke's ears. "I don't know how I got so lucky to have a dog like you." Duke wagged his tail happily. The officer from the case arrived then, holding a small box. "I have something special for Duke," he said. Emily and Duke's owner exchanged curious glances. The officer opened the box and pulled out a shiny medal attached to a blue ribbon. "For outstanding bravery and loyalty," he announced, "Duke, you are officially a hero." The room erupted in cheers as the officer knelt down and placed the medal around Duke's neck. Duke tilted his head, then barked proudly as if he understood exactly what was happening. Emily clapped. "You deserve it, boy." Duke's owner chuckled. "I always knew you were special." As Duke sat tall with his medal, his owner reached down and hugged him. "No matter what happens, you'll always be my best friend." Emily wiped a tear from her eye, feeling the deep warmth in her heart. Duke had done more than just save his owner's life. He had proven that loyalty, love, and bravery could overcome anything. And now, no matter what, they would always have each other. As Duke curled up beside his owner, his eyes filled with love, everyone in the room knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just a story about a dog. It was a story about a true hero.